Well, good afternoon, Jazz. How are you? Good to see you again.
Hello.
And
Yeah, good to be here.
good afternoon, everyone who is watching. You are watching Lunch Out Loud today with Jazz, and my name is Simo. We do this every single Tuesday. It's a live podcast that we do, and we have been doing it now for a couple of months. And essentially, this is our way of doing a bit of discipleship live. This is our way of I suppose, working out what the Bible says. And how do we actually live it out in our day-to-day lives? Because as good as it is to say, yes, I'm a Christian, I think sometimes the reality is we've got to work out what that actually means. The good news about this is Jazz and I try and have as genuine and as honest and as a robust conversation as we possibly can. And boy, do we have a doozy for you today. We are talking about something that is in some ways relatively controversial. And I hope that Jazz is ready to share some of her vast opinions that she's got on this matter. She's promised me that she's not going to tell me who she votes for, but I'm going to try and squeeze it out of her and try and work out why she votes the way she does. We're going to ask loads of questions. We're asking, how should Christians vote? I mean, why should we even care about these things? Does it really matter? What difference does it make? There's so many different questions around this one, Jazz, and I think it's particularly relevant because we both live in Queensland, which is a state in Australia, and right now in Queensland we are about to enter into our election. In fact, right around the world, you might be in the US watching this right now, and you're about to enter an election. And sometimes the voting and our faith can be so interwoven together that it can be difficult to distinguish between the two. There can be emotion involved. There can be loads of believing everything that we are told and read. And we want to know, how do we disseminate all of the emotion and all of the information that's coming from us and get the facts? I want to know how we should vote. Jazz, you've got some opinions on the matter as if you don't. You are one of those pretenders.
I have a lot.
Pretend you don't have 1,000 opinions, but you do. So we're going to hear some of them. I'm going to try and blow some of them apart, just because I like it and I think it's fun to do that. And then we're going to go from there. So, Jazz, tell us, what are your thoughts? First up, you're the one who brought this topic up. Why do you even want to bring this up?
I'm actually so sick of hearing about politics at the moment. I'm so done with it. It's such a frustrating conversation that's had.
Hang on, let me just stop you there. What element are you sick of? Because I'm sure if everyone is agreeing with your opinion, you wouldn't be sick of hearing about it. Or I'm sure if there was less, what part of politics are you sick of hearing about?
I think I'm sick of hearing about. I think I'm sick of the arguing. There's so much arguing. And for me personally, I'm like, this is not what the body of Christ should be. We should not be arguing with our Christian brothers and sisters.
Why not?
And it's just, well, we get told a lot of the time that we shouldn't argue with each other, to the point where people are actually cruel to each other. I think that's what really gets. I'm like, that's actually like, are you literally telling me that your opinion on politics is so much more important than actually respecting and dignifying your fellow humans? I'm like so sick of it. But then I was like, you know what? If you're sick of it, there's probably other people who are sick of it too, or confused by it.
Yeah.
And maybe this is something that we should chat out.
So there's element. I take a little issue to the fact that you say I'm so sick of politics, because without politics,
I'm sick of talking about it.
Okay, but what part of politics are you sick of talking about? Are you sick of the controversy? Are you sick of the disagreements? And then are you sick of the disagreements, or are you sick of the way the disagreements are being done?
I think a little bit of everything you just said.
Well, just choose one. Let's just choose one and start with it. Are you sick of the disagreements?
Yeah, I'm sick of the way that the disagreements play out. I think that's something.
Two different issues. Being sick of the disagreements and being sick of how they play out is two completely different issues. You see, the reason we have disagreement is because it is the fact that we're coming from different life experiences, and we have one object that we are looking at, and we have two different visions on that. So we have a conflict. One person is saying the object is square, the other person is saying it's round. And so that's where a disagreement begins. And the truth is, sometimes the object is square and sometimes it is round. And what we need those disagreements, but we need to be able to do them well so we can get one person to see the other person's perspective, one person to see the other person's vision. One person is to see the other person's view. If it wasn't for disagreements, no one becomes a Christian.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we've got to have a point where we disagree with the way we're living life, where we disagree with sin. There's got to be a disagreement, and therefore we've got to agree with a new way of life, a new way of thinking. So we need disagreement.
Yeah. But I don't like how the disagreements are playing out.
That's
like,
okay.
I don't care if people disagree. I disagree with everyone about everything, probably.
Yeah. So you disagree with me what I just said? No, I'm just joking.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so we disagree with the way that disagreements are outworked. Tell me from your perspective how you see disagreements being outworked and how you think it could be done better then.
I just think a lot of the time people, and this is another thing that I have a bit of an issue with, a lot of the time you see people and they're putting their political persuasions, I guess is how you describe it, their political persuasions as their personal identity. And that's wrong on a lot of levels, because we know our identity doesn't come from anything apart from the value that Christ has made us in. And then the way that they then will attack, I see a lot of attacks happening on other people, and they're attacking people personally. They're not attacking actual arguments or actual issues. They're attacking people personally, like, you're an idiot if you believe that, or how could you be so stupid, or how could you be so heartless, or you're not, even to the point where they're saying to people, you're not a Christian if you vote that way, you're not a Christian if you support this policy, or if you don't support this policy. So yeah, that's just, I'm looking at it going like, whoa, this is not Christian conversation.
So personalized attacks is not part of how we should have disagreements, correct?
Definitely.
So how do we have disagreements then?
I think that.
Let me just stop you first. Let me ask you, what do you think of the people who do that?
I just get really sad. I get really sad. I'm like, oh, like, that actually saddens me that you've chosen that way to talk to someone, or that like you're not. It just makes me, honestly, I just get really sad.
Do you ever get riled up and feel the same way towards them that they're now projecting towards you?
I used to.
My point is, it's very contagious, that thinking, though, hey?
Yeah, it is. Oh, yeah, it is. I used to get really, really riled up. And now it takes something pretty bad to get me like, oh my gosh, you're actually horrible. But now, like, it mostly comes out of like, that's really sad.
Okay, so let's keep going. So what we're talking about right now, for those who are just tuning in right now, Jaz and I are talking about politics, and when Jaz made the statement, I'm sick of politics, I said, you can't make a statement like that. Without politics, we have no laws, we have no functions, we have no governance, we have nothing operating as a nation. So, well, I'm not sick of politics, I'm sick of arguing. And I said, well, again, without arguing, without disagreements, we have no resolution and ability to move forward. It is the very disagreements that allows us to come to a stronger and better place together. We need disagreement. So where we're at now, we're talking about how we disagree well, and how this affects our politics, and how we as Christians should do this. And why does this matter? Because what I want to separate right from the very start is the difference between our responsibility as a voter versus the responsibility of a politician. Because the responsibilities are two very different things. The responsibility of the politician is to outwork the will of the people through the party's principles and policies and values, and through their own filter of how they want to particularly, what their own filters are of how they particularly see the world and view the world. Right? That's their job as a politician. Our job as voters, our job as people who are voting, is to decide whether we want to back a particular person or a particular party and the way that they stand. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So we're talking about our job as the voters, and often as lobbyists, right? Because when we share an opinion that's political, we become a lobbyist for a particular person or party or policy. Would you agree? Have I missed anything so far?
No.
So are we talking then about how we lobby, or are we talking then about how we vote? Because they're different things. I told you I was going to hammer you on this one today.
Yeah. I think that we could talk about both. Which one do you think we should go into?
I think we can. Let's start with how we should vote, right? Let's talk about, how do you think, what are some of the important fundamental decisions that we need to make as Christians when we vote? Actually, let me ask you this question first. I put this one up here. It's going to come up here. Here you go. You ready? You like that one? For
Oh,
those who are
great
listening along,
question.
is it those who
Great
are listening on at
question.
home? I've asked Jazz a question. Is it okay for Christian leaders to tell you how to vote? Now, if you're watching this, you can participate in the conversation. Just add a comment if you're one of our live viewers. Tell us now, is it okay for Christian leaders to tell you how to vote? Yes or no, Jazz?
No,
Why not?
no.
Why not?
Oh, I'm so against this. Like, it
Why?
actually frustrates me so much because if you're telling someone how you vote, that's fine. To
Sure.
tell someone how to vote, I think is very wrong unless
Why?
you're actually taking, and this is what I find problem with. I think anything in life, you can't tell anyone how to do anything in life unless you're in an actual relationship of discipleship with that person where you can sit down with them and explain things out to them. But if you're telling someone how, like, just go and vote, I think it's really, really irresponsible to just tell people, go and vote for this. Unless you're actually taking the time to sit down with them and explain to them how you got to that, explain the things, the reasoning around it, like allowing them to become educated in that, teaching them how to educate themselves to actually make those decisions for themselves as well. So this is why I'm just like, oh, you can't just go, like, it'd be like me just going out and telling everyone, oh, you have to all become vegan. Well,
People
no,
do that all the
you
time,
don't
Jazz.
have
That's the
to.
point.
No, I
Here's
don't.
okay. Counter argument. Okay,
Okay.
just playing the devil's advocate for a moment.
Well, let's not
If
be.
okay,
I
let me
always,
just play the God
yeah.
advocate for a moment. Then
Okay.
let me just give you a counter argument. All right,
Yeah.
and this is a respectful disagreement.
I think
And
I know what it's going to
I'm not
be
saying I agree
also.
or disagree with this. Do you? What's it going to be?
Are you going to say that sometimes people don't have the capacity to actually do that? So it's
No,
actually
I'm
taking
not going to
someone's
say
advice.
that. I'm not going to
Okay.
say that.
All
What I'm
right.
saying
That's
is, if
fine.
Christian leaders aren't telling them how to vote, somebody is. Facebook is already
That's true.
planting a whole feed. The media is already planting whole feeds on people telling them how to vote already. Politicians are telling them how to vote. There's a load of information telling people how to vote. At the end of the day, people still process that information and then make a decision for themselves regardless. One way or another, even when a Christian leader comes out and tells you how to vote, it doesn't mean that you have to vote that way to be a part of under their leadership. It doesn't mean that you have to vote that way to be friends with them, and it doesn't mean you have to vote that way to be a Christian. That's
Yeah.
just them going, this is me as a leader going, if you want to know how I'm going to vote, or if you want to know how I suggest you to vote, then vote like this. How is it any different to any other member of parliament, leader, or anyone else telling them how to vote?
No, I don't think that's right either. So,
But the media is doing it all the time, Jazz.
yeah. And people,
You're a product of being told how to vote for yourself.
to myself.
So you're a product of being
Yeah.
told how to vote yourself. So you have had information come to you of people going, you should vote for this party because of this, or you should vote for this people because of this, or you should vote for this because of this. Now, somewhere along the way, you've gone, I agree with that. I'm going to do some more research to find out if that's true because of the personality that you are, right? But
Yeah.
somewhere along the way, that's happened, and you've been a product of that process, and it's made a decision of how you vote. So why? And I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just putting an argument to you.
Yeah.
Why should Christian leaders be any different?
I think because what you said before, your comment of just because you're voting a certain way doesn't mean that you are or you aren't a Christian. And I think that maybe what I've seen displayed from Christian leaders in my life or in the circles that I'm in is that often there's that underlying, this is how Christians vote. And I think that's very wrong. Like if you're going to tell someone how to vote, maybe explaining these are the issues that that party or that person is supporting, and being very, very clear that salvation does not hinge on that.
Right,
Like our
absolutely.
Christianity does not hinge on it. And maybe that's why I've just like kind of like become like, actually, I don't like that because I just see it done very, very what I believe is wrong. Yeah.
So the issue is not whether it's okay for Christians to vote. The issue is how Christian leaders have told people how to vote. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think just like the underlying, like it's almost like you, because as Christian leaders, we do guide people in so many different areas of life.
Right. But we can tell them how to live morally. We can tell them how to make decisions around their finance, but we can't tell them how to vote. Interesting.
Well, I was just about to say that. With a lot of those,
so you're arguing against yourself now?
No, I'm just putting out different different thoughts out there, because like, yeah, I have considered that, like, oh, actually, but even in those things, if we as Christian leaders aren't actually going, hey, this is a really great way to live morally, these are the reasons why, go and do your own research, go get yourself, like, go and pray about it as well. If we're not doing that, then I think we're not leading very well either.
I agree with you. There's no disagreement there. The only disagreement is you said Christian leaders should not tell people how to vote. And I'm not saying they should or they shouldn't. I've got my opinions on it as well, which I'm happy to share.
Are you going to share them?
Yeah, I will. But what I'm saying is that I think that the counter argument is simply this. Christian leaders are allowed to tell people how to vote. It comes down to how they tell people. Are they informing them with all of the information? And the answer to that is the same as my answer with other leaders who tell them how to vote. No, not always. So sometimes we do a really poor job at communicating. And my next question to you, which is countering, or not countering, but it's a flow on from what some of the things that you were saying. You made a couple of comments in there about that you feel though sometimes it's like if you're a Christian you will vote this way, or if you're not, almost your salvation hinges upon how you vote. Have you ever heard a leader actually say that?
I've definitely heard leaders say Christians should be voting for this, or Christians will be voting for this.
Yeah. Which is an opinion, right? Like, and that's I think that's one of the. If it's not caveated with my opinion is Christians should vote like this, okay? That's a different thing. It comes down to communication. It comes down to our technique. But I do think it's actually important more than ever for Christian leaders to stand up in a non-divisive way. We're not talking about technique right now, but actually stand up and actually let people know what some of the important values are that we stand for and what does it mean. And it's the same with the way that we outwork our life. And you're right before. You mentioned about the fact that people aren't going to do their own research and very few people will. That's the truth. I mean, I'm flat out getting Christians to read their Bibles, let alone read some political parties' policies and values. And so there is a responsibility for us to sort of give people a brief overview and understanding of it and realise that it's always going to have our bias on it. I think the fact that we could allow politics to divide a church and allow a different perspective to divide a church, it gets sad. We're living in a world where unless we share vision or views or opinion on things, we feel like we can't maintain relationship and friendship. I fundamentally disagree with that.
Yeah,
you and I could vote for two different parties and still be really good friends.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that going back to the way we disagree, I think part of the issue here is the way we present our opinion around voting as Christians is becoming so divisive and destructive.
Yeah.
And I think we do run the risk of telling people you're only a Christian if you vote this way. And I will say this, it shouldn't be. If you're doing that, if you're sharing things as though your view is the only correct view, let me just tell you right now that the beauty of a democracy and the richness of what we have as a nation is that none of us have the ability to fully grasp the whole truth, right? Absolute truth. In fact, if you're a Christian, you would agree with the Bible, I'm assuming. And Jesus himself said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Remember, even Pontius Pilate, when he's like talking to, he goes, what is truth? Yeah, we have a desire to understand truth because we can only see it in part. We only try and get a perspective of it. And when we're on this fundamental path of just, I will always disagree with that person because they vote Labor or they vote Liberal or they vote Democrats and they vote Republican, wherever you're from. When we're on that path, we can't see what God is doing through an alternative person. We miss out. Someone's not a Christian because they vote for a particular party. Someone's a Christian because they follow Christ.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Which then brings to the next question, should all Christians vote the same? Obviously not. We don't need all Christians voting the same. So what's your conclusion, Jaz? Is it okay for Christian leaders to tell people how to vote?
I think that they can share their opinions just like anyone else. But I think it's very important as Christian leaders to ensure that when we are sharing those opinions, that we're very, very explicit in the fact that this is not salvation.
Is it okay for Christians to tell you how to live?
Look,
Christian leaders to tell you how to live.
Like, that's what people go to church for, right? To get direction in living.
Is voting a part of living?
Yeah, so they're going to get opinions. But I think it just like, it comes back to that fact that if you're going to be telling people how to vote and basically implying or explicitly or actually telling them that this is what your salvation is on, then no, don't tell people.
We're not talking about that. We're definitely not agreeing with that. We're agreed it's not that. You can't do that. But if you're telling people and you're trying to give them some context, you've done some research, okay, like a good leader should before they share those thoughts. You've done research and said, hey, this is what the research shows. Guys, this is what I think we should do when we're voting.
Yeah, well, look, if they want to, they can.
So is it okay?
Do you want me to say yes? Like, I still don't think it's okay.
But that's okay for you to say no, you don't think it's okay. It's okay. We can disagree on it and still that's the whole point in this, Jaz.
Yeah.
It is okay to have a disagreement. I think it is okay. And I think what is in question is the way that Christian leaders do it. And because it's been done poorly, we're judging all Christian leaders the same.
I am.
And that's the hard thing, Jaz. You're placing a judgment on that leader before they've even told people anything.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You're going, oh, they're telling me that if I don't vote that way, then my salvation is not secured. It's like, no, they're not. They're just telling you that they think that you should vote this way. You don't have to do it. Your salvation doesn't hinge upon it. They're telling you to think these different things through.
Yeah.
I won't ever tell somebody a party to vote for. I could tell people that a party may have certain policies that they're going to struggle to disagree with. I was having a conversation with somebody today and I said to them, my difficulty is that I disagree with the policies on both sides and I agree with the policies on both sides. So that's where it gets difficult.
Yeah.
And I get really upset and hurt when people get into this point where they're like, that party can never do any good. The Liberals will never do any good. Or the Labours will never do any good. Democrats will never do any good. Republicans can never do any good. It's like, come on. Yeah. Let's get real here. We're not in a position where we're having to make these decisions. Thank God for that. Because imagine, having to make some of the decisions that are having to be made. I think there's a few important things to work out when we're deciding who to vote for and how we should vote. Number one is values. I think that's sometimes even more important than policies because the policies will be formulated from values and policies will change. Okay? Yeah. So it's looking at what is the value and the value system of that particular party. Yeah. And do they align with our values as a Christian and an individual Christian? And just in case you're wondering, I can't even get two churches to agree on every single value point of view, let alone political parties, right? So chances are you're not going to get something that perfectly aligns with your value system. So you have to work out which is the closest to your value system. Yeah. I think that's really important. Look at the values of a party. Because in 4 years' time, the policies will be like ebbs and flows. They're going to change, right? Look at the values and look at their ability to govern. So they're the decisions that actually I think should determine who we should vote for. Yeah. Which is the best person at governing, because we may go, but I really like that person. We make these decisions based on emotion. I like the look of them. That's a funny name party. I'll vote for them. And it's just like, that's lovely. But ultimately, we've got to kind of look at it and go, who is the best person to lead? I'm going to give you an example that you will not even relate to, Jaz. But at the moment, there's a sporting team in Brisbane. Have you heard of the Brisbane Broncos? You heard of them before?
The what?
Yeah, shut up. You know what I'm about. They got rid of their head coach by mutual agreement. Yeah, controversial. Yeah, and they're looking at signing a new coach. Now, there's a lot of emotion around one of the main candidates for that coach. His name is Kevin Walters. Well, Kevin Walters used to play for the Broncos. He's an old boy, and so there's heaps of all the old players like, yeah, Kevy, we love Kevy. He's the man. The question is not whether he is the man. The question is he able to do the job? And sometimes people make decisions on emotion rather than their ability to do the job.
Yeah.
And so that's the danger when Christian leaders do. And when Christians put emotion and sometimes even their religion and their faith behind the decision of who they vote for. They go, but I'm a Christian and they're a Christian. Yeah, but they might be a terrible leader even though they're a Christian. They may not be good at governing the country or governing the state or governing your area. Just because they're a Christian doesn't automatically qualify them for your vote.
Yeah.
You've got to look at their leadership and their track record of it. You've got to look at the values of the party that they're standing for and go, do I agree with the values that they have? Do you agree with that or disagree? Thoughts?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. That's another big, makes me so angry.
Well, they're a Christian. I'm a Christian. We should vote for them.
Yeah. Oh, bro. I'm like, I look at people, I'm like, I know a lot of Christians who I would literally never vote. Like, I wouldn't even get to babysit my cat. Like, that's not good enough for me.
Yeah. So any advice then, Jaz, on how we find out the values of a party?
Yeah, so you could do like a really big, long job of it. And I've actually sat down and I've got to update it because this is from 4 years ago, or like whenever the last election was. But I did a spreadsheet of all the people eligible to be elected in Queensland. And then I put out I think it's like my top 10 values that I had, or just like policies that I was interested in. And then I went through and I read all their websites.
Wow.
That was only because, you know what, I see a lot of things being posted and shared by people and it's so biased. I look at things and I'm like, you've literally just made that party sound good because you've hidden half the truths. You've hidden the fact that they're actually terrible in this, or the fact that like they're supporting these things, or like it was just ridiculous. And I was like, I can't actually trust anything out there. So I'm going to go through it and have a look. If you can't do it to that intensity, then I would maybe just encourage pick 3 top values that you have and just like do a quick search, like on the electoral website. And like, this is all a lot of effort, but you know what? Like politics and the governance of our everyday lives is a lot of effort. So if you think you don't have time enough to bother doing this, then don't complain for the next 4 years when things don't go how you want, because you probably don't even understand what's happening anyway, because you're not doing the reading. So go and have a look through, like, you know, maybe the main parties, maybe the 5 people in your area. That's another issue. I think it must have been the federal election then, because I looked through everyone. But there's usually 5 people in your area who you can vote for anyway. So that's not a lot. That's like 15 things that you're looking up, 3 of each of 5. Yeah. Have a look through, pray about it, look up scripture, literally go to biblehub.com. Anyway, is it info topics? Oh,
which one are you talking about?
The one where you can just like write in a topic. Go to it like a online concordance and write in or that. Write in, I don't know, whatever it is, climate change if you want, or environmentalism if that's a topic that's important to you. That's just an example. And find out what the Bible says about it, and then talk to Holy Spirit about it and ask him, hey, should this be important to me? How are we meant to be caring for this? And if he says to you something that actually isn't as important as something else, then, you know, adjust yourself like that. Change how you see things, change how you think that, yeah. Like I know there's other ways to address other issues in our society. But yeah, that's my thing. Like, actually just do your research and read. Great. You can go to people who you trust, your Christian leaders, if you'd like to, and get their thoughts and their opinions on it, but research it and don't just take it as at face value. If you want to, if that's how you want to do it, that's fine. But personally, I just don't take it lightly. I think it's too great of a privilege and responsibility to just be taking it on other people's opinions.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's important that we make sure that we do it well, and that we actually take some time just to do a little bit of research. And Understand this, yeah? Exactly like Joe said, the media is always going to have a bias, right? It's because you have a bias. I have a bias. Jazz has a bias. We all have a separate bias. No matter how much we try and go, no, I am completely neutral. Like, don't be so narrow-minded. You have a bias, okay? And so Facebook picks up what your bias is as well, just so you're aware. It creates an algorithm and goes, Jazz likes this particular type of article. She gets stirred up when she sees this. In fact, if we put 10 of these things on Jazz's newsfeed, she'll stay on there for 7 minutes longer than what she would have.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works. They want you staying on their site for as long as possible. They want you commenting and coming back because you're a user then. You're continuing to consume everything that's on their site. So please understand that Facebook is creating a narrative for you to follow. Okay? So don't just think that it's important to be able to try and follow what you're reading on Facebook. One of the things that I like to do is I like to really listen and to understand the opposite opinion of my own.
Yeah.
I listen to radio stations that infuriate me. I read articles from the opposition of what I think, the opposing views of what I think, and it makes me mad. And then I take some time to process it and debrief myself and make sure that I'm thinking about it right. But either way, I'm trying to consume and understand what the opposite thinking around this particular thing is. So I think that's really important as well. And I think you can actually search up what a party's belief system is and their values as well, because understand that you're not just voting for an individual, you are voting for a party and what that party stands for as well. Jez, we spoke about disagreements right at the start. I think we've spoken about, voting and how Christians vote. You spoke about the fact that you get frustrated with how disagreements take place, and I in particular get really frustrated with how these outwork themselves now in really public forums like social media. Your views on how we can do this better?
Look, I think that, and maybe it's like a really utopian, like New Kingdom kind of thinking, but aren't we meant to? Anyway, is that every word that we say, even if it's a disagreement, should be words that are beautiful gifts to that other person. That comes from Galatians 6, I think it is, where maybe it's Ephesians. I don't have my Bible here.
I think I know the one you're talking about. I'm just looking it up. You keep talking.
Where basically Paul is saying, like, hey, you guys are like needing to talk to each other in really kind ways, like things that are beautiful. Like literally, it's in the Passion Translation where he says beautiful gifts. Ephesians, yeah. And anything other than that is a worthless insult. And so even if you're in a disagreement with someone, are the words coming out of your mouth honoring the fact that they are an image bearer of Christ? Are you making it a personal attack on them and their human dignity? Or are you just saying, hey, what you just said just there, let's like dissect that and let's talk about that. Because I have conversations with people I disagree with all the time. And you know what? Not all the time do I bring up the fact that I disagree with them. There is so many conversations where I'm like, there's actually nothing to add to this conversation if I mention that I disagree. There's actually nothing that can be won. But more can be won if I just stay silent and I listen to them and I respond to what they're saying instead of bringing up what I want. So yeah, I think those would be like my two things. Like when you're in a disagreement with someone, consider what are the words that you're saying. Are they gifting that person with the things that the Lord's given you to gift others? And number two, like consider is there any point in actually creating an argument out of it, or do we just sit back and listen? Because we don't need to give our opinion all the time, which I've learned.
How did you learn that, Jaz?
Look, honestly, it just got to the point where I was like, I actually feel really bad about the way that conversation went, and I really wish it had gone much nicer. And I was like, I would much rather have different conversations with people. Yeah.
So what is worth arguing over?
I don't even know if I would really want to argue with anyone about anything. Like, I definitely like to have discussions with people and say, hey, let's chat this out. But it's like got to be at a certain like the context is pretty much it. Like, what place are you at? Do you have time to actually sit down and have a full conversation, which is going to be something that affirms everyone in that conversation and actually values and respects them? Or is it just going to be like, well, we have to quickly discuss this, and then like you leave that conversation and you're like, nothing was like resolved. There was no conclusion to that, and there's like now someone's angry, or I'm angry, or there's hurt or bitterness.
This is the verse you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen.
Yeah, that's a good translation. What's that?
NIV.
Oh yeah, because like that according to their needs is, I think, really important. Maybe at that moment someone doesn't have a need of being convinced of one thing or another, but they have a need of where they're going. Like, you know, we hear so many people who will say that, oh, I don't like hanging out with Christians, I don't like coming to church because they judge me. But what they're actually saying is that I had a hurt that was not responded to appropriately. You know, you think of the woman who was brought by the Jewish leaders, and they said, we just caught her in the act of idolatry. Jesus, what are you going to, like, what do you say to that? And her need in that moment wasn't to be, she knew she was in the wrong. She knew. She didn't need to be told that she was wrong again, but she needed to have that knowledge of forgiveness, and she needed that love spoken into her life. And so often we go into conversations and say to people things that we think they need, but we're not actually listening to the deep down, like, I actually have a need to be loved, or I have a need to be spoken to. I have a need for healing, or I have a need for encouragement right now. And we're not giving them that. We're giving them an argument instead. And that's not beneficial for anyone.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Jaz, and I think that's exactly part of it. And I think one of the ways that we can do that is by knowing what the needs of the other person is. And one of my thought processes on this is always trying to understand where a person is coming from and understand their perspective. You know, like you can, let's just imagine, for instance, you know, we're both looking at this drink bottle or whatever, and we're going to have different views and perspectives on it based on where we're sitting. All that whole argument.
Do you know what else? You even have, like, looking at that drink bottle, I bet we have different experiences and different memories as well that impact us.
Sure.
So just a little add.
Yeah, but my point is, I'm never going to be able to get you to see what I see unless I can take the time and the effort to come over to your side of things. So Jesus is a magnificent example of that. You know, if the story of Jesus is true, which we believe it is, if the story of Jesus is true, he didn't just go, you guys should all just have a heavenly perspective. He came down to earth to understand our perspective and actually help us be able to get his perspective. That's how he brought about the change of humanity, by becoming one of us. And so I think that part of what we've got to do when we're having debates and we're having discussions around politics, which is healthy, it's healthy to even have arguments. I think it's healthy to have arguments if it's done in the right way. We've got to start from being in a position of respect and honouring of those that we're actually having that conversation with. Why? Because we want it to benefit all those who listen. We want it to build up all those who listen. One of the issues that we currently have in our political world and our world in general is that it's either my way or the highway. My opinion is right. Trust me. I have like 7,000 views of my view, and they all agree with me. I got 1,600 comments. They all agree with me. Okay, that's fantastic. But let's take the time to see other people's perspectives. Let's take the time to honour when somebody else does something good. You may not even agree with Labor being in government right now in the state of Queensland. You may disagree with some of the policies and the outworking of it. But just take a moment to consider this. Could you do what they do? And if so, put up or shut up. Get up and do a better job. It's easy to sit from our armchair and criticise. It's much harder to build up. It's much harder to talk about all the good that someone's done, particularly when they're from an opposition thought point of view. And I think that's where healthy arguments or disagreements can actually come from, is when we're concentrating more on how can I build this person up right now, rather than just, I'm going to show them that I'm right. Jaz, I wasn't sure where we were going to go with this or how this was going to come out today. I think it's fair to say we've had some good, robust conversation around this one today. Our encouragement to you is this, right? Build each other up. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to have different opinions. It's okay for your Christian leaders to tell you how to vote. You don't have to agree with them. They're just a voice in the many voices that you are hearing right now. Christian leaders, if you are telling people to vote, make sure you remind them that their salvation is not dependent on how they vote. that their attendance to your church is not dependent on how they vote. That you remind them that Christ loves them even if they think differently to you. That it's okay that we can walk hand in hand, that we need the differing views and opinions in order to come to a greater understanding of truth. That Christ is truth, that you are not the ultimate authority on truth, that we get to do this journey together. We want to say thank you so much for listening. We look forward to more controversial topics and more robust arguments, and no doubt we will probably talk politics again closer to the election because it's a subject that interests me and I like it, and we might even talk about some policies along the way as well. Wouldn't that be fun, Jaz?
I do enjoy talking about policies.
Hey, thanks everyone for listening. Look forward to seeing you guys after the school holidays. We're going to have a 2-week break. We're going to come back feeling fresh and full of excitement, ready for next term, filled with heaps more great conversations. We'll see you guys next time. Don't forget, join us for Sundays on citypointchurch.com/online or direct message us, DM us, hit us up in the DMs if you want to join one of our local home churches that are meeting all across the city. Thanks again, guys, and see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.